We have a very exciting episode today. We're going to be talking with Michael Paladino, who is a very successful entrepreneur in Northwest Arkansas, who has successfully launched, grown, and sold a technology services firm. We're talking about something today called Highstep, which is an approach we're taking to creating and rolling out a number of new professional services firms in Northwest Arkansas. It's going to be very exciting. I look forward to this conversation. So, Michael, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yes, sir. So again, Michael Paladino. I grew up in Little Rock, Arkansas. Was fortunate to get to go to the University of Arkansas and attend the Walton College of Business, which you know well. From there, had a number of different jobs in software engineering. I'm a software engineer by trade. Love writing code. Have loved that that portion of my career. Was at a digital agency named Rockfish, which many people in the area will recognize that name. In 2012, my co-founder and I decided to leave Rockfish and start a company called RevUnit, that is the one that you're referring to. And so had an incredible opportunity there to start a company with 2 people, grow it to 105 people over the course of 7 years, and then had a few more years after a private equity transaction that we did at that point, and ultimately shut that business down at the end of 2023 at almost 11 years. I don't know if all that math added up or not, but somewhere in that range of 11 years of running that business, which was an incredible opportunity for me to learn. I started as the technologist writing a lot of the code, which was my comfort zone. But when you grow a business, hiring 105 people over the course of 7 years, that is a rapid learning curve, as I know you know and have experienced in your career as well. Lots of learning in that endeavor. And gosh, as I'm at this portion of my career, a lot of what brings me joy right now is to get to help share that knowledge with others. And so I've been able to do that over the course of the last year, just through relationships, through people that I've known, through the Arise program, which is something that Startup Junkie has put together. And now I'm getting to formalize some of that into this program that we're talking about today, that is Highstep. So really excited to share more about that, really excited to jump into that and get to help some entrepreneurs, hopefully get to do some of the same things that myself and my co-founder were able to do through RevUnit.
Well, starting right out of college in Rockfish, which was a professional services firm, and that professional services firm created a bunch of entrepreneurs that launched a bunch of other professional services firms that have been very successful. It may be the source of more entrepreneurs than any other company I'm aware of in the area, other than maybe Walmart, JP Hunt. But for a small company, it really generated lots of entrepreneurship. And then you stepped out on your own with your partner. You hired a lot of people, and that is challenging. But you also had to learn how to get new business. You had to develop your network. You needed to learn about pricing and strategy. Would you mind speaking a little bit about that learning?
Oh man, there's so much. Every one of those topics have had stories to go along with them of how we got to that learning, and things that many people listening to this podcast will say that that's just common sense, and they're probably right. But when you are 2 people running as fast as you can to deliver a product, a lot of things fall by the wayside and you forget about and you don't pay attention to. And largely that was the experience in those early days. So if you're fortunate enough to close some business, you're executing against that business. And largely people starting these types of companies have expertise and competency in the type of service that they're delivering. That's where we were. Joe, my co-founder, and I we love digital product development, myself on the technology side, him on the product and strategy side. So our default was to fall into the execution. In fact, after we closed a couple of our larger contracts later into our first year, we had a moment where we had two contracts executing at the same time. He owned one, I effectively owned the other, along with some help that we had hired. We finished both of those around the same time and looked up and realized we had forgotten to sell for the last 3 months because we'd been doing nothing but execution. Forgot all about the sales side of it. And that was a terrifying feeling to wake up and realize, all right, we successfully completed this, but we didn't have a pipeline developed. And that was one of those just early learnings of you can't just focus on the execution. You have to always be selling. You have to always be bringing in new business in these types of firms. Fortunately, we survived that little valley, made it out the other side. But I like to think back to one of the other lessons we got. And Jeremy Wilson of New Road Capital was an advisor for us and a good friend. We were in a meeting at one point, that sort of a pseudo advisory board, and he was looking at some of our finances with us, and our accounts receivables was starting to grow and grow and grow. And there were some really aged receivables on there. And again, this seems like common sense. Don't let your receivables grow. Go do your collections that you need to do. But again, if the decision is to execute on a current contract or somehow go send an email or try to follow up with a past customer, we were tending to default to executing on the work. And so some of those best practices and how to collect payments were not being practiced. And Jeremy looked at the number on the receivables sheet and he said, "Michael, how much of the company do you have?" And 50% effectively. And Joe looked at to Joe, "How much do you have?" And he said 50%. Well, that right there, those customers, they have 50% each of your money. And it was an interesting moment of, he's right, that is our money and we're not going after it. And so I realize those are really in the weeds types of stories, but those are some of the experiences that we had. But again, for someone who is able to focus on one area of a business, obviously someone in accounting is never going to let their receivables get that sloppy.
Right.
But when you are a founder of a company coming in with an expertise and you're thinking about executing against that expertise, some of these other things sometimes tend to slip a little bit.
Well, one of the reasons I'm excited about Highstep is because we have a number of people like you who have learned this through the School of Hard Knocks. You not only have you learned how to start and run successfully a professional services firm, but you also have learned how to develop a network to build your pipeline. And you've already got that network. So one of the things that really got me excited about this was thinking, well, we've got more than a dozen of these people like you that have done that. They have the experience, they have the network, and they can help others succeed at doing this. And I remember when Josh Stanley, our partner in this, showed me his research on the exits, on the amount of money that was paid for these companies that were started, professional services firms, over the past 15 years or so. It was enormous. It looked almost like, in some cases, SaaS, software as a service companies that have sold. And of course, I've been aware of it. I remember 30 years ago when some of this started taking place, because Thompson & Murray started about 30 years ago, Mitchell Communication. Thompson & Murray became Saatchi & Saatchi X, which still exists today. Mitchell Communications was bought by the largest PR firm in the world out of Japan. But there were a number of others over time where this happened. And so I was aware of those exits. But when Josh showed me the number that have occurred just in the past few years, I was shocked. Were you?
Absolutely. I've got some of the numbers in front of me. It was in the last 5 years, PitchBook is showing 45 acquisitions of professional services firms.
And Northwest Arkansas.
In Arkansas. And that is ranging anywhere from below $10 million all the way up to upward, above $100 million.
Wow.
That is a lot of wealth creation. It's a lot of tax revenue. It's a lot of job creation.
And it's in Arkansas.
In Arkansas.
Yeah, there's been there's so much opportunity in Arkansas, and it seems like in Arkansas people are keen to help one another succeed. I've really noticed that. I noticed it when I moved here, but it's become even more apparent to me over the past 10 years, and you're an example of that. And really, Highstep is an example of that. So we keep talking about Highstep, but no one knows what it is. So would you tell us what Highstep is?
Absolutely. So, excuse me, Highstep is an accelerator for professional services firms targeting the retail value chain, specifically tech-enabled professional services firms. And so what is a professional service firm? We're talking about digital agencies, retail media agencies, retail brokerages, generative AI companies. There's a number of different types of businesses, again, targeting any of the needs in retail value chain. So if you're not familiar with the term retail value chain, if they're listening to the Matt Waller podcast, I assume they are, but everything from sourcing and manufacturing all the way through supply chain logistics to delivering the product to the customer and even the post-customer experience or the post-purchase customer experience. And so we obviously have a unique right to win in the retail value chain in Northwest Arkansas and in the state of Arkansas. And so, again, this is an accelerator program targeting for companies targeting the retail value chain that are going to be tech-enabled. And the tech-enabled side of it is something I know you personally are quite interested in. With my background in technology, it's a really interesting opportunity for companies to be able to service their client base in a unique way. And so Highstep is a program hopefully bringing all of those things together. We're going to bring in 10 companies. We're in the process of recruiting those companies right now, those founders of companies that don't exist today. We will surround them by many of the types of people that you're talking about, individuals that have run those companies that we're talking about. Will be the mentors and advisors to these companies. So it's a pretty unique access to subject matter expertise from people that have been there and done it, from people that are actively connected in the community in the state of Arkansas. And so really excited to be able to bring some people in, surround them with subject matter experts, mentors to help them get their companies off the ground. And honestly, hopefully avoid some of the mistakes and challenges that we ran into that we're talking about earlier.
And we can help them with their networking. We can help them get their customers. We can help them write their contracts and agreements and help them think about how they should formally form their entities, who should join them and help them. And we've already got these people together more than once. And many of them I've known for sometimes a few decades. Being dean of the Walton College, I was fortunate, and that I could, a lot of times alumni would contact us and tell us, "Hey, we've started this business now. We've got 100 people, or we're selling our company now, and I'm looking for something else to do." And so they contact me about this, and not just in Northwest Arkansas. This includes people in Little Rock, Jonesboro, El Dorado, Fort Smith, et cetera, et cetera. Arkansas has been known for entrepreneurship from the beginning. And I've always thought one of the reasons we've had so many successful entrepreneurs is being a landlocked state with few resources originally. It has caused us to be scrappy. I mean, people might think, well, J.B. Hunt, why would they locate in Northwest Arkansas? I mean, when they started here, we didn't have good roads, no access to rail or waterways, and yet they became one of the most successful trucking companies. And Walmart did the same thing, and ArcBest and many others. So we've got that level of entrepreneurship. But then we have entrepreneurs like you, Josh Stanley, and many, many others, Eric Howerton, so many that have created like you were saying, this is good for the state, not just because it generates tax revenue, but it creates jobs and good paying jobs. But even beyond that, these firms are tech powered professional services firms. So you think about a professional services firm that's tech powered serving the firms in Arkansas and beyond. So actually, these firms give a competitive advantage to the firms that are operating in Arkansas. Many times big companies, sometimes they're companies from outside of Arkansas, but they're doing business here. I know RevUnit, you certainly, I mean, I'm aware of some of the things you did, and it gave your clients a competitive advantage. So tell me a little bit more about the tech-powered part.
Yeah, so we know generative AI right now is just a whole can of worms that we are all in the process of opening and trying to understand what to do with that. We know it can drive efficiencies. We know it can drive new business models. I think one of the things that's also commonplace in business, sometimes it's harder to retrofit an existing company with new technology than to just start one from the ground up. And so I think about a new business starting with generative AI and some of those technologies at its core, thinking about how do I service a client? What are the offerings I bring to a client? An individual starting a company with that in it at its core just has a unique advantage over someone who has done things one way for the past 5 to 10 plus years and is trying then to retrofit some of this technology into what they're doing. And so I'm personally excited. I think the challenge of how would you think about solving a problem with that technology at its core when you don't have the baggage of an existing legacy business. I think we're going to see some really interesting ideas come through. I think we're going to see people able to, in our cohort, able to solve problems at a pace that is just surpasses that of some of the legacy businesses. Again, it's all a thesis, but we know we're seeing this in pockets with what people are doing with this technology now. We're going to get the opportunity up close and personal to get to see that with 10 companies that are coming out of this program.
So when you think about Highstep being an organization that is spurring the growth of professional services firms that are tech-powered to help their clients gain competitive advantage and serve their markets more effectively, it really gives Arkansas a competitive advantage. Because if we have these firms here, that's a huge advantage. Now, because we're going to come alongside these firms with people like you that have the know-how, they have the connections, they know how to get the customers, actually. And we have this new thesis that AI and some other related technologies can serve as a tool to scale these firms. You know, what's really exciting about that is that this is going to happen. Adam Smith's invisible hand is going to create firms like this. There's no question about it. But we're doing it right here. And I know the first meeting we had with all these founders who have had exits. So when I say a founder who has had an exit, these were founders of professional services firms that built a company and then sold it. That's what we mean when we say exit. But in almost all the cases I'm aware of, their exits exceeded what they could have ever imagined. I don't know if you thought you were going to have to, most people don't think, oh, I'm going to start a professional services firm and sell it for millions. I mean, it just doesn't, I think a lot of times they're doing it to have a career.
We were very fortunate that having been at Rockfish, we were there through the acquisition that they went through. So we had actually seen what that was like, and we were surrounded by some people that understood some of that. So we actually did have the good fortune of understanding what the opportunities were. when we went into starting Rev Unit.
So you said something that was really key there. You said you were surrounded by people that were helping you. And that's part of the thesis behind Highstep. We're going to surround these firms with people that can really help them succeed.
Absolutely. We had to go out and search for them. We had to find those people. And we're very fortunate that we did. And back to the attitude of giving in Arkansas, there were a number of people that, for no reason other than just to help us be successful, took an interest in us. And this, in some ways, our hope and our effort to be able to pass that along to this next generation of entrepreneur. Hopefully they won't have to look as hard as we did, because we're going to be able to bring a lot of those people to the conversation as part of this program.
Would you speak to the structure of this, the stages, funding, those kinds of things?
Yeah, so we are looking for companies that have either very just recently started or have not started at all. And so in some cases, that may be an aspiring entrepreneur that is sitting at a full-time 40-hour-a-week job today. They might be sitting on some unique insight, or they might be questioning, can I do this? And so our hope is to create an opportunity for that individual to take that step. The first 2 months of the program, we're actually going to allow for someone to be working a different full-time job while participating in Highstep, because we recognize that is how these types of companies oftentimes start, as a side of the plate type of project. Now, that doesn't sound easy, because it's not, but that's part of what we hope to allow through this program. And so after 60 days, we have an investment committee that, based upon traction, are actually going to be able to invest dollars into the top 5 businesses. So of the 10 that we bring in, 5 of those will get $100,000 of funding for 7%.
So they'll be able to quit their job and
that is the idea at that point, that we will be able to provide them the safety net to say, let's take that step. Here's some funding to get your salary covered while you're building up your book of business. Something unique about professional services firms relative to others, they don't need a lot of capital to get started. Now, depending on your perspective, $100,000 may sound like a lot of money, but in the world of investment, that's not much. And so, but it's enough to get someone, to give them that nudge to take that leap to start that company. And so we're excited to see how that comes together. We're actively working on marketing right now. If you're listening to this, would love to hear from you. But excited about that. One of the aspects of the funding that is exciting as well is that funding is coming from fundraising from these same mentors and founders of these companies that we've been talking about. So largely those investment dollars are coming from these mentors that you're surrounded by. And so you have people with a vested interest in your success for those 5 companies that do get funding after that first 60 days. The program will continue on for the next 3 months. So it's a total of a 5-month program that these companies will be surrounded by the support and help that they need, hopefully to be in a great spot at the end of those 5 months. So yeah, just looking forward to getting started.